So I wasn't quite done talking about this, but yeah, it's the shape of a spade, which is a little bit like the shape of some Eastern what, roof motifs. Russia, India, and it's, yeah, like a spade, like in a deck of cards. But also a spade is like the tip of a spear. But since I've curled it around this, it looks a bit like the tip of a pen. The pen is mightier than the sword. Well, in this case, the pen is mightier than the spear, than the tip of the spear. So far as writing goes, who is at the tip of the spear? It's interesting that, like, John the Evangelist explodes with the word, the Logos, and redefines, well, actually, the English interpretation, you know, the way in which the English interpretation has affected the conversation is so profound. The translation of the Logos to the English word, it's a truncation of the complete meaning, but such a pragmatic, useful, ingenious, beautiful way to speak to the spirit of the age, the zeitgeist. As we look into that word, the word, because it was truncated, it was understood by more people. And because it was understood in any way by more people looked into the word, into the Logos. And the expansion of even the idea, the word, the denotation. Denotation? Detonation. Not detonation. Denotation of the word as the Logos. It sucks people into philosophy. That English word, the word, sucks regular, everyday people like me, a house painter, a 3-time college dropout, it sucks me deeper, and thank God there's the internet where it's like I can look up philosophy, I can look up theology, I can look up etymology, I can look up math, I can look up geometry, I can look up rational trigonometry. I can look these things up for myself and answer some of the questions that my professors couldn't answer. It was like, that was the biggest thing that stopped me in my tracks, is like, I'd get to a really, really hard philosophical place, and it's like, before I go further, I need to figure this other thing out. And I'd go to my professors and they'd be like, meh. They didn't give a fuck about that shit. But now I can find the people who do give a fuck about that shit. I'm a little bit pissed I was born in 77. I wish I was born in 97. Because I remember the questions I had when I was 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. I remember those questions I had. And I remember the answers I got, and how disappointing they were, and how it crushed my fucking soul. Looking up to my elders and just receiving plates of shit. I don't blame them for it. because I know I myself have served up plenty of plates of shit to those who, in any way, I have been a mentor to, or should have been a mentor to. Age does bestow a kind of wisdom. Unfortunately for people like me, it's easy to fear that it has come too late. Maybe it has. But anyway, I really just wanted to talk about this object and how the spade of it is a bit like a pen, the writing, the blue, of course, as I said before, Mary, everything blue, Mary, maritime, marine, marine, America, maritime law, Mary Totten, Miriam, Miriamin, Marian, Maid Marian, Mother Mary, Mary, Mother of God, Mary Magdalene. Mary's cousin Mary. Mary in the Gospel of Thomas. The rainbow is the symbol of Thomas, right? So the blue is in reference especially to the blue faces of both Eastern American wild turkeys. It'll be a long time before I get to that. A long while, not this video. And a reference to the blue faces of some of the Hindu deity depictions. And because it's also a spade is the tip of a spear, it also has to do with Thomas the Doubter, who said he wanted to stick his finger in that spear hole on the resurrected Jesus before he'd believe it was Jesus. But what people don't often link up with that is that in the end, in India, Jesus sent Thomas the Doubter the furthest away. And 2,000 years later, how much faith would you have to have? As the doubter, how much faith would you have to be the one who was sent the furthest away from everybody? All the other ones were sent out, and their peoples kind of intermingled, and but Thomas was sent far away. And quietly, his little tribe has held its ground for 2,000 years, almost. The Portuguese had their stint there. They came and went. Did they influence a little bit? Marginally. The smallest enclave of Christians in the world, the most set apart, the most, like they're an island unto themselves, mostly, is the greatest testament to the truth. And what I was getting to was that, in the end, the tradition is, so the story goes, wrapped up in mystery and mythology, and even wrapped up into Hindu mythology. I'll address that elsewhere. I've touched upon it. But St. Thomas was killed with a spear. The rainbow, before it was this, that, whatever, was a symbol for St. Thomas. He was somewhere over the rainbow. And the people in India revere Thomas, similar to the way, it's a little bit like St. Thomas over the top, right? But the people in India never met Jesus. They met Thomas. And Jesus said, "You will do these things and greater things." Right? I'm paraphrasing. St. Thomas has done a greater thing. His seed lays dormant. The progeny of Thomas will be one of the greatest moral forces in the world over the next 1,000 years. St. Thomas, the apostle, not St. Thomas Aquinas. St. Thomas Aquinas has taken on a little more street cred these days, right? Fair enough. But he will be so far. St. Aquinas, his resurgence will be a century, couple centuries, maybe. Probably closer to a century. But St. Thomas the Apostle, his star hasn't even yet begun to rise. St. Thomas was who the Christ sent back to the Magi. The Magi. The Magi. And the God magic that is pregnant and on the verge of expulsion. A little bit like explosion, but a little bit nicer than that. Somewhat like a God-centric panspermiation of philosophy and theology that the world has never seen the likes of. There's also the doling, and I don't know if the slow resurrection of St. Thomas, I don't know if that's the same event as the event of the doling, D-O-E-L-I-N-G, baby female goat. A doling, a doe, like a female deer, but a doling, a female baby goat. The doling event comes, and the ascension of St. Thomas comes. I don't know if they are the same event. They might be the same event, which would be something else. But they may be separate events that commingle, a bit like the golden legend of Saint Agnes commingles temporally with the historic mythology of Hypatia, the quote-unquote Neoplatonist. I say quote-unquote because I believe Neoplatonism is a misnomer for what should properly be called Platesianism. I myself, and I myself am an iamblichean Platonist, if I'm a Platonist at all. And I'm certainly not Neoplatonic. Though, some of my favorite people in the contemporary world are the people who talk about Neoplatonism. So I'm down with the philosophy. I'm just sickened by it being called Neoplatonism because it's the correction. Neoplatonism corrects all of Plato's errors. Neoplatonism is still the most powerful philosophical force on the face of the planet. It's still it never hasn't been since it began. Nothing has overtaken it. The same way that it overtook Platonism. But it overtook it because it destroyed it. It overtook Platonism because it gutted Platonism. So to call it Neoplatonism is like calling post-World War II America neo-Nazism. Or post-World War II Russia neo-Nazism. Or, you know what I mean? Or let's see if we can think of another example. It's like calling America neo-Britanism. I mean, kinda, but it's like, well, no, we cut the shot. You know, it's not a new this, it's an... You know. But in the same sense, it still holds it up because it relies upon it as a source. So I guess you could say that's the weakness of Platonusianism. You could say that's a weakness of Neoplatonism. Because it does rely upon the lengthy bibliography of Plato. But a lot of that just has to do with the fact that that's what was kept. And a lot of the reasons why it might be that that is what was kept, it is because it was the most complex thing that dull minds could comprehend, even if incorrectly. That's a bold claim for someone stupid as me to say. But sometimes it takes a fucking idiot to see what's plain as day when they see it right before them. Sometimes. Maybe this is one of those times. Maybe not. You'll have to decide for yourself. I'm sorry. But I just think it's also kind of pretty. This little symbol at the bottom. Andrew and Peter. So when we think of the brothers in the Bible, Cain and Abel, the one who wouldn't even kill an animal is the one who killed his brother? So his brother killed animals for God. But he brought vegetables to God. So when bringing a sacrifice to God, he couldn't even bring himself to kill an animal for the altar. But his brother could, no problem. So then the man who wouldn't even kill an animal then killed his brother? I don't know. 9 times out of 10, what would you say would be more likely? What's the likely outcome? Well, what are some of the next brothers we meet? What do they do? One pretends to be the other. And of course, we don't know that Cain and Abel, were they twins? It says that Eve bore one and then the other. But it didn't say between those two bearings that she, once again, came to be with child, or however it was stated, as usually it is. She had this one, then she had that one. Ah, a puzzle, a logical mystery. And then we learn about the twins who, I guess, must have been what? Is it paternal or maternal twins? Must have been maternal twins, because one was hairy and one wasn't. And one pretended to be the other to get the inheritance. But of course, everything in the Bible, all patterns speak to all other patterns. So shouldn't that maybe bring us to, like, shouldn't we be suspicious that the slayer was slain by the one who didn't slay? Okay, so that's just a tangent, side note. And then also Ishmael and Isaac. So that's like with the divergence, like this stock represents Abraham, the initial covenant. And then the split is Isaac and Abraham, right? So when we get to the sides, that's Judaism. That's the corpus of Judaism, the breadth. It's what holds everything together at the edges. Judaism is the horizontal axis of Abrahamism. It's the narrowest population, but it has the greatest breadth. And it holds everything together. Abraham. And then there's the split between Isaac and Ishmael, which is the split between Islam and Christianity. It doesn't happen at the exact same time. One's a little higher than the other. The idea is that they're supposed to come together. All of them. Israel, which is the breadth, is also meant to come straight up the middle. And Islam and Christianity are meant to come together on the sides. Why Islam and Christianity? Because Christianity is really central, because Christianity also comes straight up with the Judaism. But Christianity proper, but Islam is still a Christian religion. Islam is still a Christian religion. One could say, like, the simplest way to break down, like, the backstory to Islam in a way that's, like, easily digestible to my mind is, what do they call it? So, like, in the New Testament, there's the Sadducees and the Pharisees. The Sadducees and the Pharisees are different sects of, like, quote-unquote Israel or Judah, quote-unquote, that weren't around in the Old Testament. Now, there are sacred scripts that exist between the Old and New Testament that aren't included in the Bible, that are included either in, like, Apocrypha or in I guess I don't know, like, what it would be called, but, like, within Jewish tradition. In some, maybe, in some Christian traditions, some Messianic Jewish traditions. But anyway, the Sadducees and the Pharisees, like, the big split between the Sadducees and the Pharisees is that the Sadducees only read the Torah. Only read the Torah, the books of Moses, the first 5 books or whatever. And the Pharisees read the whole Old Testament plus. And Islam is kind of like the Sadducees So, like, wherever Muhammad came from, he came from a tradition of the Sadducees that carried on as a separate sect of Judaism that then was married with some kind of sect that, to the best of my approximation, like, it seems like Islam seems to be more or less born out of the Torah, or an adaptation of the Torah, or a reinterpretation of the Torah, because of the discrepancy between Ishmael and Isaac. But that's so important. And it's also, like, true. Like, it's true in the same way that the Old Testament is true. It's true in the same way that the New Testament is true. It's this mythology that we have to, like, there's truth behind it, but everything's so poetic. And it's gone from mouth to mouth to mouth to mouth to mouth to mouth. The story, the word, the logos. Well, the logos is like the word, the truth, speaking truth. But the logos is also poetry and what if and what we want. The logos is what we speak into the future. And that thing that we speak into the future pulls us to it. And the thing even more in the future than that pulls at us without us even ever saying anything. It pulls us to speak. It pulls us not only to speak, it pulls us to speech. It pulls us to inner dialogue, inner monologue. That teleological pull. Causal. A causal pull. An unidentified force. An anti-gravity spindle through the center of everything that sucks everything to it. Like the Omega point. It's all down, 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 down. Outside, outside, darkness, darkness. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep trying. So hard, so hard, so hard, so tired, so tired. Wait, we can see the top. Maybe. I don't know. It's a nice way for kind of hopeless folk like me to think about it. But yeah, Mary. And also at the end of the Gospel of Thomas, there's this enigmatic line about